All right, so I'll read the right to know checklist. As chair of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Facilities Subcommittee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Sanborn School Board's Facilities Subcommittee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-558-8656. Meeting ID 958-4098-7649, or by clicking on the following website address: www.youtube.com/C/SRSD meeting videos. Anyone wishing to make a public comment concerning items on the agenda can email Matt Angel, MANGELL, @SAU17.net. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the Sanborn School District at www.sau17.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-642-8541 or email helpdesk@sau17.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Jamie.
Jamie Fitzpatrick, home in my office alone.
And Larry.
Larry Heath. I'm in my office. I'm alone. I wish I was where this island is.
Yeah. Matt.
Matt Angel. I'm at my office, at the SAU office, and I'm here alone.
And Tom.
I'm here at the SAU office alone. Well, I mean, there are people out in the office, but I'm in my office alone.
Yep. And Jim Baker, and I'm in a room in my home alone. So call the meeting to order, do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Matt, you want to walk us through the funds balance?
Sure.
Balances?
Yeah, and all right, do you see that up on your screen?
Yep.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So these are updated balances through the end of December. The first one, Special Education Expendable Trust. The year-to-date balance is $241,168.81. The only change in the month is interest of $4.19. The next one down is the Capital Improvement and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund. The ending balance for this is $223,031.53. And that has $3.88 of interest in the current month. If we move on down, this is the Unanticipated Educational Expenses Capital Reserve Fund. The ending balance is $150,196.05. It has interest of $2.61. And then if we roll on down here to the bottom, this is the Facility Use Revolving Fund. It currently has an ending balance of $192,304.48. We had a rental payment of $11,666.67. And then we also had expenditures of $1,750 that relate to the iPad purchase for Bakey. This is to buy the licenses for it, but it's not the actual iPad yet. You're going to see that in a future month.
Thank you. I like that monthly rental.
Yeah. So the total of all the reserves here is $806,700.87.
It's 806, 787. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any questions or comments? All right. CIP plan. Matt.
Okay. We just had one left, which I gotta pull it up. I zoomed everything, so it's hard to see it. So this is to discuss the LED lights, and in the CIP plan, let me see if I can pull it up. Share to my screen. Share. Okay. So basically, it's a rehash of the last one. Okay. Now this is also part of the solar project, and this deals with this is our energy usage at the high school, and we spend about $8,000 a month in electricity for the high school. And one of the projects that we want to do is to bring LED lights to the high school. We've spoken about it at some of the other schools like Bakey and Memorial. One of the things I want to do is show to you, here's a proposal from Unitil for upgrading the lights at like Bakey, and we're just use this as an example. So basically, the project cost there would be like $52,000, which they were going to pay $22,000 towards it. So the idea here is that we're going to end up having to fund a project for LED lights at the high school. It's probably going to be in the tune of about $600,000 if, and this is a number that was given to me by Unitil, and they were going to cover about half the cost. This is a couple of years ago that they made the offer. So it was going to be a project that would cost the taxpayers about $300,000. But the overall thing that needs to be done is we need to assess how much electric usage would go down, how much is being saved, what the return on investment is, so that we can maximize the dollars. Okay, so what I'm asking the committee to do is to approve LED lights as a CIP project. We can put in $1 for the high school and start planning in a couple of years to try to get that done. And I know Jamie has a lot of experience with these LED projects and knows how they work. So we'd be leaning on him for experience.
Yeah, I can probably bring in, I've already contacted a guy I used to work with, and he's put me in touch with somebody that does the local schools in New Hampshire. So he could come in and help make an assessment. And so we at least know what we're talking about in terms of some of the details of what programs are out today versus what isn't out there today. Generally speaking, you got a 32 watt T8 in your ceiling, most likely. I suppose it's possible we have some 40 watts, but from 20 years ago, I would think we got some 32 watt T8s as a primarily lighting that's going on. You can get, depending on what the offering is and the light levels that you need, you can get anywhere from an LED at say 10 to 12 watts. I suppose you get as low as 8 watts, but you probably don't get the light output that you want on that. So your energy cost is based upon wattage. You see kilowatt hours. It's based upon wattages. If you're going from 32 to 12, you're going down about 60% in energy costs. So you might save somewhere in the neighborhood of this 8,000, 4,800 a month. So if Matt's 300 is right, you'd be looking at, let's say, to make my math easier, 5,000 a month, 60,000 a year. it would take 5 years to pay off if that was the simple calculation. But that's basically what you're looking at in terms of energy savings. Also with fluorescent burnouts, you have to deal with a hazardous waste disposal cost because they have mercury. So there's a cost there of a cost avoidance once you flip it out, but you have to pay that when you take them all out to begin with. So it all factors into it. But, you know, depending on where, Matt, you think that this might be slotted, that would be depend on when I want to bring somebody in to take a look, see, because you'd want it current with whatever the incentives are. With today's change of administration, it's quite possible that incentives will change next year or the year after. That would be far more lucrative than they are today. That's a possibility also.
Jamie, when you've talked about this before, you've talked about the option of just replacing the bulbs rather than the fixtures. Is that something that's, am I getting that right, or?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways. So a lot of the energy, the main consortium, DLC that drives these rebates is financed by fixture companies. So they skew everything towards replacing fixtures because that's who funds them, is the fixture companies. And they're trying to get you to take fixtures. It's a lot cheaper to keep your fixtures and replace your lamps than it is to, once you, in many instances, when you're replacing fixtures, you're breaking into the line of the ceiling. And when you start breaking into the lines of the ceilings, particularly depending on how old the building is, you are at risk of finding things and disturbing things that ought not to be disturbed. So often the easier methodology is to simply take out a fluorescent lamp and put in an LED lamp. And you get the majority of the savings that you get from an integrated one. So roughly speaking, you can get one of those lamps for $3-4. Roughly speaking, you're going to get a new integrated fixture before labor of, depending on what kind of fixture you're getting, anywhere from $60 to $160. So it gives you some idea of the level of costs involved. The other thing that they get into and they try to push districts to, or push any potential client to, is controls. So certain light levels at certain times of the day, changing brightnesses, responding to daylight harvesting. I mean, they all kinds of things that they can do with controls, but controls are extremely expensive. And generally speaking, the benefit that you get out of them, particularly at a school, which is set primarily during the sunlight hours, is quite limited. So all those things would be factored into it, and we could look at proposals and either with my own knowledge or with my group of networks that I know that have been involved in this and do this for a living. We could pretty easily assess whether we're at the receiving end of a selling job or whether we're at the receiving end of a, how do we help you to save energy that meets your needs best job. And there's a difference between those two statements.
So for a point of reference, Matt, do you know if this proposal that's up on the screen for 52,213 includes fixtures, or is that just for bulbs?
That's just for bulbs.
Okay.
Now, I do want to kind of dovetail off of one of the points that Jamie is speaking about. What I want to do when we're doing this LED project is try to consider any HVAC upgrades at the same time, because we may be tearing down ceilings in order to access all the pipe work. And why replace bulbs or fixtures when we're going to be tearing it out anyways? So my point is we need to address HVAC at the same time we do LED lights to make sure that we're maximizing taxpayer dollars.
In terms of the analysis.
Well, I think exactly. So
that would have to come first, right?
Yeah, the analysis has to come first. We have to get approval from the school board and the go ahead towards a project like this. Make sure all the funding is all lined up. And then, so when we pull the trigger, we're not wasting dollars.
So how much time do you estimate it would take from beginning this to knowing where we want to go and having the funding?
I think it would probably take about a year to actually design this out properly, because we need to make sure that all the components are all planned out. So we're not tearing something out inefficiently. So really, I was thinking that this would be a project that we wouldn't start this summer, but we'd probably start the following summer to be done 3 years out, which is about the same time that the high school bond is going to be paid off.
I thought we had 5 years to go on the bond.
We have until 2024.
Really?
I think the last bond payment is August of 2024, which is fiscal year 25. So at that point, we can probably entertain doing a upgrade to heating and cooling without impacting the tax rate. If we really can figure out how to reduce our costs, our overall costs, and try to do it beforehand, we're certainly going to look at that. And of course, grants are going to make this thing go much sooner.
Yeah.
That would be, to me, one of the things that we ought to be making sure that we're taking a look at. I expect some large spending plans coming out. I mean, we're already talking about, in addition to the previous COVID plan, a $1.9 trillion package coming out. And that's in addition to the regular budget. And there's already talk about expanding the regular budgets considerably. So given some of the proposed programs of the incoming administration, this would be one of the target areas. When you look at the Green New Deal and you say, I mean, some of the Green New Deal, I think we could agree that we're not going to ground all aircraft forever and tell everybody all travel's got to be by vehicle or electric car or something. So those types of things aren't going to happen near term, but something along the lines of how do you reduce energy consumption from lighting or energy consumption in HVAC, those things are easier. And one of the parts of the Green New Deal was redoing all the buildings in the country. A little ambitious, but if you're starting there, you're going to start with massive subsidies to get people to do those types of things. So we really need to be monitoring what is coming out as proposals for the spending plan and then maximizing that should they occur.
Matt, can you stop sharing screens so we can see people? Thanks.
So
I agree with Jamie.
Say again?
Matt, so you're proposing to put this in the CIP for the start of the analysis in September,
Not this September, but the following summer.
following September. So that'd be 2022. Is that right?
Yeah, the key is to have it in the CIP plan so that we can show the board that it was considered. Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that if we get funding, I'm going to be moving forward with this.
Yeah, we're going to watch what Jamie's been talking about very carefully, because we like to, whatever the situation is with grants or funding that's out there, we like to hop on and grab as much as we can, as you already know. So Jim, I think all of the CIP projects it's an estimate, right? It's like this strategic plan, it's an estimate and it's a roadmap. But I will say that having been in a district previously that did this type of plan, the cost savings were unbelievable, but they did a full comprehensive plan for all their buildings. The company that came in and did the entire project across all schools, heating, or I'm sorry, because I just want to be careful with Jamie about the word air conditioning. Climate control is, they addressed climate control and lighting universally throughout the district. And the way it worked was that the company did all the work, did the project, and then if you don't get the savings, they pay the bill. So they estimate out what the savings would be, and you're supposed to save that amount, a certain amount of money annually in your utilities costs, and that's what pays the bill for the project. And then if they don't meet that goal, then they don't get paid. So I'd just be interesting to see, Jamie. I'm really glad that you're able to help us, because I think Matt's right that one thing we learned from that project in Maine, which actually won an award with Coca-Cola. So we were actually at this big national symposium in Boston, and our school district won an award along with Coca-Cola for efficiency for one of their plants. It was pretty cool.
Yep.
And I think that the key was exactly what Jamie said, like, maximizing your efficiency by analyzing things like fixtures. Do we need to do fixtures or switches based on, I loved what you said, Jamie, about, schools are open during the day usually. So you don't have to, you want to figure out all those levers. But I think the big one that Matt brought up that I really don't want to lose focus on is that once you have all the stuff down in the ceilings, it's a lot more efficient to put a pipe in for the heater than it is to do the lights, put it all back up, then take it all down again and do the pipe for the heater. We want to maximize our efficiency organizationally, do this right once, right? That's kind of the way I like to roll. I'd rather do it once and do it right, pay a little more, but get a bigger return. But I really want to hear and learn about the return on investment. How many years? How's that all going to balance out? The company we used in Maine was Siemens, SIEMANS. But there are many companies. It needs to go to bid. It needs to be a very, very carefully done process, because it really could be something that we need to move on a little sooner than later, depending on how the grant situation rolls out. So thank you, everyone. It's really helpful.
And then and this will depend, my thought is timing. So April, May, maybe into the June timing. What I'd like to, Matt, is we've talked about this CIP in bite-sized views over a course of many meetings. I'd like to get the final document together and then spend time with you saying, all right, we put in a lot as a dollar because we don't want to overstate this, but what would the priorities be for this group to be considering? And if, on the facilities committee or not in the next board, that I think should happen. And we go through that detail and start laying it out and say, preliminary guesstimates. All right. Then when do we want to get quotes on it and start laying out what that means in terms of the types of dollars that are being talked about right now, placeholders. But I think that's part of what we're going to need to be doing over really starting at the end of this fiscal year.
Go ahead, Matt.
At the next meeting, you're going to have a formal document. And actually, that's a great time to talk about priorities as well, because I need to bring up topics such as replacing the boilers at Bakey, because we're down to one. And also to talk about doing upgrades in the auditorium, because at the last public hearing, that those mics.
Yeah, Tom staged a good show there. I must say, I raced over to tell Jim that good job staging his production.
Well, you'll be happy to know
from the days of your Potemkin City, something like that.
I have noticed very hard
too
to
that the mics keep getting worse.
Yeah. Maybe this Gremlins, right? Like that. I love that movie Gremlins from the 80s. No, Jamie, I do think that it's, we were going to talk about this tonight anyway, so I'll just mention very quickly that I have talked to Gordon and he's preparing an order for just microphones to try to tie us over, because there's a bigger conversation. What I told Gordon is, if we get microphones, they have to be able to work with a future soundboard in the auditorium. I don't want to piecemeal this. I don't want to do it cheap, but if we buy the right microphones, they need to later be used in the auditorium, because I don't want to duplicate that cost, because it's about a $9,500 cost to buy 12 really good microphones that do this properly. So what I told him is that I'm not buying analog microphones because they're old. Digital microphones are the future. And then we're going to get together a real solid proposal to deal with the auditorium. And again, it goes back to people. I know our high school is beautiful and our auditorium is acoustically wonderful, but it is 20 years old. They are still literally using a CD, a floppy disk to run the lighting program in the high school. Do you remember those, like MS-DOS, like the little squares with the, I found one in my basement. My son was like,
that's what I'm using for this meeting right here.
Yeah.
Right into it.
Yeah, there you go, buddy. Old school, baby. I didn't say it, you did. So anyway, I'm working on a proposal to figure it out, but I think you all know that we'll be very careful and we'll do it carefully, but on that CIP plan, in my mind, there are a couple of things that are going to be a real priority. Number one is the heating at Bakey. Any kind of heating items that we have to deal with, you got to have heat, right? You can't, it's like, when you think about your weekly priorities, you've got to have food and clean laundry and a vehicle to get to work, right? Like you got to do the things that can't run a school without heat and electricity. So then the second level is for the really truly right underneath that for me right now is dealing with the auditorium. We put it off for 2 years. I'm anticipating or planning as if school is going to be normal in September. That's my plan. I mean, if it doesn't happen, fine, but I've got to think that way so that I can keep my sanity. And within that, I just don't, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I want to be really clear that there's the microphones, there's the lighting console that controls the lighting, and there's the soundboard that controls the sound in the auditorium. And it has to be able to interface with Zoom and YouTube, which is something we've never asked our equipment to do because these days of virtual attendance to meeting are a part of our world now. The other thing that we can't forget about, and I know you're going to hate this, Jamie, but we do eventually have to replace the screen in the auditorium. It is old. It's not as burning a priority as the soundboard. And the question I have for Matt and Gordon that Gordon's working on right now is if we upgrade the lighting console, will the current lights in the auditorium work with the upgrade, or are we going to have to actually replace the fixtures? And Jamie, I'd love your help with that because I'm really new to the LED world and the way LEDs work. Like when I did the project at my camp this summer, I couldn't believe how simple LED lights just go into the ceiling, and compared to like those old tubes that you used to put in, you know, with the bulbs, and the LED lighting is unbelievable. I just can't even, it's amazing. So it's, in my mind, it's 4 parts: microphones, a sound system console, the lighting console, and the screen. I'll work on all of this and get back to you, but I did ask Gordon to get together the microphone order because I'd like that done before the deliberative. We need to have good sound at our deliberative, especially if we end up being remote for some reason. It's only 2 weeks away, but I'm worried, right? We can't have what happened at the public hearing happen at the deliberative. So we're working on one step of the solution as a quick fix. It was under $10,000, but the boards are big money, right? Bigger money. So I don't even have a cost for you yet. So we'll get back to you. Luckily, we already did the projector, which was a big item. So the projector's all done. So that's great to have that all taken care of. Integrating it all is the key.
And one of the things that we talked about in the past is in having that, what does that provide us? And Matt's given some ideas about the ability to be able to rent out the auditorium. What would be our projections there? And that would defray some of the costs. So if in fact we could go that route with some type of a belief based upon sound planning that we could rent this for different uses and for different community events, then it's basically a twofer. You have something that benefits the community and you get something that drives revenue.
I agree.
Over the long term.
And I think that that's the key, Jamie, is that how far do we want to go with upgrading? But I think it's important to note that right now the number is 0 because the system's so difficult to manage. I wouldn't rent this system or use it. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, I can add on to this. I just want to make sure that you guys understand that it's important to me that we also chase the revenue as much as trying to chase the expenditures, okay? It's easy to cut, but it's really hard to generate revenue. If we do this, we really have to work very hard to make sure that we are renting this thing out as much as possible all the time. And
yeah, I'd like it renting enough so that we actually have someone managing the rent. Like the place is awesome, but it's totally underutilized. And what's holding it back is the systems. But the real thing is, I mean, I'd like it to really be, I mean, my vision, it's up to the board and the community, but it should be a community center where there's all kinds of cool things happening. Concerts, shows, plays. I mean, the space is not being utilized to its maximum potential, not even close. But obviously right now, nothing is. I mean, you can't have, you know.
Right. Yeah. So Matt, you would like the LED added to the CIP tonight, right?
yep,
Okay,
for $1.
for $1. Anybody have any objections to that or any comments? Jamie?
I just make the same comment as before. I do think it's prudent to have it in. When you do your assessments, okay, this is something that should be in the overall plan, but you do your assessments and nothing gets expended without a validation of cost benefits and return on the investment.
Right.
And Sorry, I'm being horrible tonight. Thank you, Jim, for being patient with me.
So with that understanding, I move that we place the LED project and analysis into the CIP plan. Larry, did you second that?
I second that. Tom wants to talk to you.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick, I just wanted to restate Jamie's caveat that whatever timeline we agree on for this may adjust very quickly based on the grant availability. So I just want to maintain our nimbleness about that because we might be able to capitalize on some federal money.
Yep.
So I just want to be careful about the dates. This is one I'd like to see get done because I think it would save us a lot of money. Could be wrong. We'll have to see.
So Matt, when were you going to put this into? I mean, I know it's flexible as far as the actual, when it actually starts, but what were you were going to put it in for September of 2022? Is that right? Matt, I can't hear you.
No, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So can I get a vote? Jamie
Aye.
and Larry?
Yes.
Okay. Same for me. All right. Is that it on the high school, Matt?
Yes.
Okay.
There's one more agenda item.
So just before we jump to another agenda
Yeah,
item,
go
on
ahead.
that CIP. So Matt, you're expecting there'll be a formal document that you'd have available? Because then what I'd like to do is then spend some time with that document and start hatching through it and start laying. So now we've got the skeleton. So you got the CIP is the skeleton, but it isn't ready to go to the dance yet. We got some meat to put on that flesh, on those bones rather, and get this thing so it's more usable.
Yes. And I'm hoping that it's going to be part of the, it's going to be the beginning to the strategic plan that we're hoping to get going this spring.
We are going to get going this spring.
Yeah, and I
The
want to make
spring, is that what you're targeting for getting that going? Okay. I was going to ask that, yeah.
and then I want to make sure that what ends up in the strategic plan has more substance to it as the CIP plan that we're trying to accomplish tonight.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Everybody all set on this, or do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, Matt, the next item.
Okay, the next item is, I'm going to try to share my screen again. We're going back and revisiting the greenhouse because Jamie, the last time we met on this, which I look back, which was in September, Jamie had a question about whether this program is going to be taking time away from students. And so let me kind of rehash this a little bit. So basically, we have a teacher who's asked for a building alteration, and basically under the board's policy, anything greater than $2,500 requires approval of this committee, which is now up on the screen. And it's greater than, the total is greater than $2,500, okay? But basically it's a little small greenhouse that would go on the lawn out behind the school lunch facility at the high school on the grassy area. There's not going to be a pathway. However, there was talk about throwing down some paving stones if needed, okay? It's not anticipated. This would be used during the spring and fall, and it's not to take away from classroom time, but to augment classroom time. So say, for example, they're going to be doing some teaching about health and nutrition, about how food is grown, and then also some science aspects about how food is grown. What they can do is, instead of doing it in the classroom and speaking about it in the classroom, they can walk out to the greenhouse and actually do the teaching in the greenhouse, talking about the science that they're doing right now. There are other parts of this that will dovetail off of it, which is wellness and fitness. Also, that there's some STEM items that can be done, like building the benches to hold the flowers. There's also talk about the STEM class doing hooking up solar to run the pumps inside. So this structure is actually not going to be attached to the building, and it's not going to be, the utilities aren't going to be run off of the building. It's all going to be run solar. And then the STEM class can also adjust the timing of when the windows are opened and closed to adjust the heat in the building. And then they're also going to try to capture rainwater. So they will, for utilities, they may need some water, but that's pretty much it. So to go back to Jamie's question about if it's going to take away classroom time, it augments the classroom teaching. Now, the teachers offered to jump into the Zoom call if you want more detail than that.
So Matt, when we talked about this, I had a bunch of questions too, which were related to costs that I didn't feel were provided. There's a water pump involved. There's a solar electricity inverter. There was mention of an aquarium, other equipment, tools and materials, something called Arduino control sensors. Is it going to need a foundation? Is it going to need other systems like aquaponics, aeroponics? And what was the anticipated ongoing operating expenses? Also, my understanding when we reviewed this back in 2017 for a much larger greenhouse, we were told that there was an existing greenhouse on the property. And I mentioned that, and I was wondering if you had a chance to look into that.
So for the utility stuff, it's not connected to the building. So there won't be any lights or electricity use. It's all going to be generated straight from solar. Now, the solar is all part of a STEM lab that they're offering right now. So it's just going to be more of an augmentation event. Supplies, yeah, we're going to probably have to cover the supplies of seeds, and then equipment if necessary. But of course, anything over a certain dollar threshold would have to go before committees and approval anyways. So yeah, there are supply costs that go in with operating a little facility like this. But the benefit of having teachers teach the actual science with the item in the student's hand is probably more beneficial.
Well, the cost of the greenhouse itself, I believe, is $1,124 to $1,300.
Yep.
But the other cost could be 2 or 3 times that. We don't know. We have no idea. How about the solar system? And is there any idea what that's going to cost?
Yeah, right there. They have a cost of $215.
Okay. That's for the totals installed, or is that something we can install?
This is something that here, when you look at the documentation, what they did is they linked each item in here. Okay. Yeah. So the total, basically, this is a complete project. Okay. This buys the building, it buys all the water pumps, the filters, the solar panels, and the inverter to run it. Okay. And it's not huge items. I think the greenhouse itself is 6 feet by 16 feet. Okay. And so then it's just going to be, I think it's less than 5,000 for all the items, but it's definitely greater than $2,500.
Yeah, I thought I had in my notes that it was 8 by 12. You're saying it's 16 by what?
It's 6,
6 by
well,
16.
there's two of them that they've listed.
Oh,
There's
there's
an
the 8 by 12. I see it.
8
Yeah.
by 12, and then the other one is 6 by 16.
Is there any preference?
I don't believe so. I think they would be happy with either one of them.
So you're saying that when you add everything up, it's around $5,000?
Yes. And really,
Is
the
any-
point of this discussion is to get the approval to modify the facility. Because we're adding to the facility. This isn't approving the project.
Right, but what's the modification to the facility specifically?
So basically what we're doing is we're adding a structure to the grounds.
Oh, I see. Even though it's a separate structure, it's not modifying the high school building.
No.
Okay. Any,
Jim.
yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I talked to the teacher who's going to be doing this. And essentially what he was telling me is that this is going to be a training course in-house to help, well, there was a lot of kids that were talking to me. This is when we had our rocket shoot. They were all talking to me and telling me how they want to use it, how they intend to do it. There's STEM people there that were talking about, well, we need to do this, this, and this. They want to do all the work for this. Now, don't forget, this greenhouse is like those that you can get in your backyard. It doesn't require a lot of material. You just set it up and use it. I'm sure with these two gentlemen that I talked to, with the way they go after things, is that $5,000 might be an exaggeration. It could be a whole lot less. These guys do not mind going to businesses and asking, I need this, and they get it. So
You're talking about students or teachers?
teachers and the students.
Okay.
I mean, it was unbelievable. I wish you guys could have been there with me. These guys really want this. And this was all the way from, well, I think it was 9th grade up through seniors.
Mm-hmm.
They were excited. And some of these kids were handicapped. And
Yes.
One of the instructors there that was with them says, it will give them motivation to get them out of their attitude attacks that they have, because they can go out and relax and work in there and calm right down. So I would say the benefits that the school system itself will gain from this far outweighs that $5,000.
Yeah.
Matt, could you take down is everybody set with the display, the exhibit? Thank you. Okay.
If you want the
Jamie?
teacher on, I can zoom him in right now.
Well, Jamie, do you have any thoughts on this?
Of course. So I'm a bit skeptical. I remember reading back as part of the proposal when we talked about this previously, that part of the credits that people are going to be able to get is they're going to get credits for school for going to a grocery store and looking at vegetables. I don't find that worthy of credits for school. So I would want to truly understand. So it seems to me that this is a cool hobby kind of thing that is struggling to find ways to tie it into academics. And I don't know what will or will not be included in how we're going to give credits for things associated with it. But if part of it is we're going to take students to a grocery store and give them credits for parceling around vegetables, and I'm not in favor of giving credits for that.
Matt?
Yeah, this is not just giving out credits. This is actually trying to improve the quality of the education, where they're teaching the same item in the classroom, and to be able to put the item in the student's hand so they can actually see it firsthand.
Tom?
You're muted.
I just, as superintendent, I firmly support this project. But we're not being clear about the purpose, so I understand Mr. Fitzpatrick's concerns. right? Jamie, we need to get the teacher in here to explain what his program is and what this is going to do. But I just want to be clear that that should probably happen at the board level. The purpose of the facilities committee in this conversation isn't about funding the program or the credits. It's about the adjustment to the physical lot or allowing the greenhouse to be built. There needs to be a second conversation about the funding and the programming. But if I remember correctly, there is a large part of this program is for students that have special needs and attend a very heavily modified program. So Jamie, although going grocery shopping may not be that important for the average student, that may be an important part of these students' programs, and that's the piece that I think you're missing.
It could be, but
Special education money that can go toward this?
I don't know. Again, we're getting into the programming and the funding. The purpose of today's meeting is, can we put the item on the property? We need to answer those questions at the appropriate location. And honestly, I think that should be done at the board level, Jim, with the whole board. And
My
I think
point of view would be to approve the facilities alteration subject to approval of the project.
exactly. If the board doesn't approve the project, then we're not going to run it anyway. I was just trying to keep us moving forward here. That
Right, but
all these questions
we're
are
kind of
great.
trying to flesh out what's involved.
Right,
So
right.
Maybe we could hear from the teacher. Jamie, you wanted, yeah, go ahead.
just, if the case is, well, it's primarily going to be associated with special education, the first one to mention that was Larry, not the administration. So it's still not clear to me what exactly is the driving factor here. So let's listen to the teacher, but.
And
Yeah,
I
Matt.
did mention the special ed part last fall, but it's been almost 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just talking tonight.
Yep,
It's
that's fine. I brought it up.
Matt, go ahead.
For the life skills class. And then it also adds in STEM on top of that, which is
Right, the STEM, yeah.
class. Okay, but specifically for the life skills class. Do you want me to bring the teacher in? And we
Yeah,
only have about 5 minutes left.
Yep.
Okay, so. I'm gonna put you on mute. Okay, the teacher, his name is Jim Enright, and he is, I think he's a special education teacher, and he teaches the InStep program. Is it the InStep? No, life skills.
is there another meeting following us?
There
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
There's the ISA meeting.
Okay.
And so we gotta do a hard end in probably about 3 or 4 minutes. So
It's okay.
You
We
got
can
time.
do this later.
Yeah, it's not quite fair to the teacher to bring them in and say, you got 2 minutes.
Right.
That's what I was thinking, Jamie. Yeah.
well, what's the fun in that?
Well, you could do it. 2
How
minutes,
does the
go,
board
elevator
feel- how
pitch.
How does the board feel about approving the facility alteration subject to approval of the program by the school board?
I think that's the way to go. My vote would be yes.
Jamie?
I'm concerned. I don't want to be voting for something that I don't really understand what it is or how it's going to be used. So
Okay.
to me, I would say maybe we should carve out a good deal of time in the next meeting and have the full scope of what this means there and presentable so that we can better understand it.
What do you think, Larry? You
Oh,
okay with
there's
that?
Jim.
Jim's already here, but
Okay.
I would still rather approve this than have the whole board hear the, have a whole program for it, because
There's fine.
I think this is really important. And from what
Well-
I've talked to Jim about on this, I think we would all be very impressed with what he wants to do. Hi,
All
Jim.
right.
Hello.
So,
Hi, thank you
Paul,
all
are you
for
there?
having me.
yeah, hi.
I'm Mr. Baker.
Unfortunately, we only have a couple minutes because we've got another meeting that's coming in behind us. So I'm sorry to do
Okay.
this to you.
That's okay. I
Go ahead.
appreciate the time, whatever I can get.
All right.
Do you have any specific questions? I think that at various times there was some a question as to what would this be replacing? And so one of the things I wanted to point out is that it is not going to be replacing any of the curriculum. It's actually going to augment the curriculum. And the way that it does that, so I teach the life skills science. I'm a special ed teacher, but I teach the life skills science class. And we did a unit about about growing plants and vegetables and things like that. And the greenhouse would help the students to have that firsthand, hands-on real world experience where they can actually see the things like the life cycle, the nitrogen cycle, where they would be able to participate in the total cultivation of, of whatever it is that is being grown. And we can do it in a lot of different ways. So we can do traditional soil. We did have an aquaponics tank set up, and aquaponics uses the fertilizer from the fish waste cycled up through a pump to feed the nutrients to the plants. So anyone who was at the school board meeting about a year and a half ago, I actually taught a STEM class as well. And so I had an example. It was one that two students had built using some of using the shop, some of the tools in the shop and things that I had purchased for them to be able to grow the plants. And it was a great little system. So we have the fish in the bottom and it brings the water up.
I remember
so
that.
do you remember that? Okay, great.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
do.
So we can do aquaponics, we can do hydroponics, which is without the fish. And we can do the traditional soil. It'll actually encompass a lot of different students as well, because I've spoken to the shop and they would be willing to help build some of the supports. And so the greenhouse I would like to be able to fundraise for and purchase is it's 96 square feet. And it works out to be, it's an 8x12, and that allows 2 feet on either side and 4-foot space in the middle. And it's actually a space that we could use with quite a degree of regularity. So in the spring and the fall, certainly. And in the wintertime, I think we would also be able to go in there to be able to continue raising plants, growing plants and things like that. There are also opportunities for some STEM projects to be completed. And those would be things like the vents at the top of the greenhouse could be automatically raised or lowered depending upon certain criteria, which might be temperature, humidity, things like that. And there is a robotics club that and they meet during like FLTs and things once a week. So using Arduino or Raspberry Pi microprocessors, they could certainly work to build some of those things. The system is intended to be self-sufficient, so we will collect rainwater, and there are gutters. It's for rainwater collection off of the roof, and it would come into a barrel. Ideally, we would probably have it come in so that it came into the greenhouse, and we'd be able to use that in order to water the plants. I would also like to have again, we would fundraise for this. A solar panel in order to control any of the electronics or electricity needs that are in there. So the idea is for it to be solely self-sufficient. Getting back to some of the ways that it would augment curriculum, certainly within science, and there's lots of things we can do. So the life skills curriculum, the students wouldn't be taking a chemistry class, but we could certainly incorporate concepts of chemistry. So when we're looking at nitrogen, when we're looking at water chemistry, things like that, we'll be doing a little bit of that as we get into our marine science unit.
Jim, quick question. What's
Yeah.
your time frame? Jim, what's your time frame for getting this going?
Well, I think that depending upon the results of this meeting and your decision, if, for example, you were to say that we would like to proceed, then we would start doing a fundraiser. And what I would ideally like to see is that we would be able to do something in the spring. I think right now, although it's a self-standing, it's a freestanding setup, we would still want to have anchors in it. And the great thing about the greenhouse is that if we said, well, we need to move it to a different location next year, it just, comes apart and can be reassembled. So there's no permanent structure that goes along with it. So ideally, I think if we could fundraise over the course of the next, say, 2 to 3 months, and then be able to have that so that in the spring we could do it. So it's sort of a longer term. It's not like it's a 1-year thing. I'd be looking for it to be going forward into next year.
Right.
Mr. Ambrose?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tom?
I'm sorry, you're on mute.
We have to end this meeting because we have to start the next meeting, and Daniel only has one YouTube channel.
Okay,
But could we have a special meeting next week to just finish? Jamie's asking some great questions, and what I'm hearing is a combination of the shop department, the STEM kids, and some of our functional life skills kids benefiting from this project, which is really what this is really important to me. But it's important to me that it happens in a way that everyone feels good about it. And the questions being asked tonight are important. We need another half hour to discuss it. Could we even just do a half an hour sometime over the next week to just?
I don't have a problem with that. Jim, that was excellent, but I think people are going to have some questions, and we'd like to get together again to get into it again and have you address questions, and then we can go from there. Is that okay with you?
I'm happy to do so. I welcome the opportunity, and thank you.
All right. Jamie, you all,
I would say I can't do Wednesday or Thursday. Other than that, I can break whatever I need to do.
okay,
Also, if necessary, just reach out to Jim directly. Larry's had the benefit of apparently some discussions from his rocket stuff, and that helped him ground himself. I'm not so grounded yet. So Jim, just so you know, if you weren't listening before, I'm a skeptic. So I'm when you got to explain to me how this is a good thing to do. And if you can convince
It's okay.
me, be all supportive of it.
Okay, so-
Mr. Fitzpatrick, I welcome the opportunity for you to, if you'd like to send me emails, I'm happy to share with you any of the things that we've already done, answer any of your questions, and I'm happy to do so. I'm sorry, I know I'm cutting into your time.
Yeah, we
Sorry, go ahead.
really have to go, but Jamie,
Yep.
I would recommend going to see Jim's program and have him show you.
Okay.
Can you just
I would
take an
love that.
hour? And Matt or I can go with you. It is awesome. If you haven't seen it yet,
Very much so.
Well, I saw what he brought to the
Okay.
chair, the board before. So
Okay.
Jim, I'll get in
thanks,
touch with you.
thanks again, Jim.
Thank you.
Uh,
Take care.
Jamie, please let us know what you come up with.
Yep.
And
Let
I'll
me
adjourn
check
the
my
meeting.
schedule and I'll reach out to Jim.
Okay.
we'll be in
Adjourn
touch.
the meeting's adjourned.